Well, this is revolting. Let's go talk about food. Hi, and welcome back to the channel. Today I thought we'd go back to looking at diet again for a bit. In previous videos, I've discussed how you can determine your actual maintenance calories and how to adjust those depending on your goal, whether you want to gain weight or lose weight. In another video, I talked about how do you go from those calories to how that breaks down into macros. How much protein do you need? How much carbohydrate? How much fat? Well, we've still got a couple steps before we actually get to a diet, what you're eating. For me, that next step is, well, how do you take those macros and divide them out over the course of a day? You know, how much protein do you need in every meal? So that's what we're going to do today. Now, all this information and actually the information from the previous videos largely comes from the Renaissance Diet 2.0 book. It's a great resource for constructing your diet. A lot more detail than I've gone through here in these videos. So if you want to pick it up, there's a link in the description. We'll start off just in a recap of what my macros are for my current massing phase. What we calculated in previous videos is I need to eat about 187 grams of protein a day, a minimum of 56 grams of fat, that's to preserve health, and as much as about 440 grams of carbohydrate. First, let's adjust the fat and carbs. Since I'm not in a cutting phase, I don't have to be at the bare minimum for fat, so we can increase that and take some calories away from carbohydrates. 440 grams of carbs is a lot. So what I end up with is about 94 grams of fat per day and about 286 grams of carbs. Now again, you can adjust that, so it could be 300 grams of carbs and a little less fat, but that's a good ballpark. So going from there, what's the next step? Well, that's how many meals are you going to have? So I have 4 meals a day. If you want to eat more or less, that's perfectly fine. What research is showing is between 3 and 6 meals a day, it really doesn't make much difference. And it's kind of what lets you adhere to the diet. The easiest meal plan to figure out is a non-training day. It's pretty straightforward. You simply divide your macros evenly across your meals. So for me, 4 meals a day, divide my macros across. It gives me about 50 grams of protein per meal, about 24 grams of fat, and about 70 grams of carbs. Now, you don't need to hit those exactly. Other than protein, you want to be pretty close on that. As long as by the end of the day, you're around your protein target, you're not below the minimum grams of fat, then you're good to go. You may shift more, so some days you're eating a little less fat, you can have more carbs or vice versa, and you should be fine. So where things get more complicated is on training days. In my case, training days add a couple different complications. One, I add another meal because I need to get some nutrition in me before my workout. I work out first thing in the morning, so I need to have something in my stomach before I go to the gym, before I come down into the gym, I should say. So I need to plan for that. Another complication is you want to bias your carbohydrates to get about 50% of your carbs pre and post workout. The Renaissance Diet book recommends about 20% pre-workout, 30% post. So when I do my meal plan, I'm now working with 5 meals per day. Now for your protein, you still just divide that out. So now instead of 50 grams per meal for protein, I'm going to shoot for about 40 grams per meal. For carbohydrates, the Renaissance Diet book, as I said, recommends about 50% around your workout, 20% pre, 20% post. So in my case, that would be about 56 grams of carbs pre-workout and about 85 grams post-workout. For fat, around your workout, you want to kind of limit the amount of fat, and that's just to not unduly slow the digestion. Fat tends to slow down digestion. So you want to kind of minimize that, especially pre-workout, but post-workout as well. So keep it about 10% of your fat in the pre-workout meal and 10% in the post-workout meal, or in my case, about 9 grams in each meal. For the rest, of your meals over the course of the day, you can just divide out the remainder. So in my case, as I said, your protein is just evenly divided all the meals. So 40 every meal on a training day. For carbs, you've eaten half your carbs. So you have half your carbs you can spread over 3 meals. So in my case, that's about 45 grams of carbs per meal. So with fats, you still have about 80% of your total fats to consume. Spread that out over 3 meals. In my case, that's about 25 grams of carbs, 25 grams of fat, excuse me. So now you should have some targets to hit for the day, for both training days and non-training days. And just keep in mind, these are not set in stone. You can adjust and shift some macros between meals. So for example, in my case, on a training day, my plan would say 40 grams of protein, 55 grams of carbs, and 9 grams of fat. But I get out of bed and eat something 30 minutes before I work out. If I ate that much, chances are I would be sick by the time before my workout was over. So I tend to be a little less on the pre-workout. I just try and get some protein and some carbs in me. It's just a scoop of protein powder, a scoop of oats, and let them soak overnight, and I just drink them when I get up first thing in the morning. So I shift where I'm short on macros from that meal into the post-workout meal. So I might have 100 grams of carbs instead of 85, and 60 grams of protein instead of 40, or 55 grams. You get the idea. And I kind of do that over the rest of the course of the day. If I'm finding that I'm eating less fat than the plan calls for, which is quite often the case, I know I can increase carbohydrates in meals following that to reach my total. So I just want to reiterate, if I haven't pounded this point into the ground, there's nothing magic about hitting these macros exactly every meal all the time. Your body's not a machine in that way. It takes a longer term. So as long as you're over the course of your day or even a couple days, you're within plus or minus 5 or 10 grams on your protein, plus or minus 100 calories per day of your target, you're probably good to go. There's one kind of caveat to that, and that's mainly for like an older trainee like myself. I'm in my 50s, and there is some evidence that shows older trainees need to have a little more, or actually a fair amount more protein at a time in order to get the best anabolic response. Anabolic meaning it's causing your muscles to grow. I was just reading Brad Schoenfeld's new book, and there's some evidence that older trainees needs about double the protein at one time in order to stimulate the growth that a younger person would get. So a younger person might need about 20 grams of protein, of good quality protein, to stimulate muscle growth, where an older person might need 40 grams of protein. So that's a caveat for older folks. Depending on what your macro totals are, that might bias you towards fewer meals over the course of the day. If you only have 120 grams of protein in your diet, then obviously eating 6 meals a day is not going to work, because you're just not going to be able to get enough protein without going way over your target. And while there's no harm in going over your protein target, protein does tend to be more expensive. And if you have more calories in protein, you're taking calories away from some other macro, which might make your diet more pleasurable, more something that you can adhere to. Just to recap, on non-training days, you simply divide your macros evenly over the number of meals that you're going to have in that day, and don't get too worried about if you've gone, I did 10 grams more of carbs in this meal, just make it up in the next meal, or reduce your fat to make up for the calories. On training days, it's a little more complicated, and I do recommend folks check out the Renaissance Diet 2.0 book for more details on how you can apply this to your specific situation when you train. But in my case, on training days, it adds another meal. Again, you still just divide out you distribute your protein evenly over the course of your meals. You try and get half of your carbs pre and post workout. and divide the rest of your carbohydrates over the remaining meals. For fats, you only want to have about 10% in the pre and post-workout meals, and then divide the remainder out over the rest of your meals. So you can really personalize this for what your situation is, what works best for you. Hopefully that made sense. Please leave any questions you have down in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer them or point you in the direction of an answer. And we'll see you next time. An incident from last week's training prompted me to offer 2 safety tips. These are things you should be doing all the time, most especially if you're working out alone and in a home gym, for example, as I am here. 1, pay attention to the effort required to complete your repetitions so you have a realistic expectation of whether you can complete the next rep. 2, have your safety bars, straps, etc. set appropriately for the exercise you're doing so that you can escape from under the bar. As you can see, I probably should have stopped at 7 repetitions, definitely at 8 repetitions, but I pushed on for a 9th. My goal was 10 for that set and failed. Luckily, I did have the safety bar set at the right height and I was able to escape without any problem. Train safe. 23 and change, so you can... Do you have that goal? Jeez. Remember, write a script.